You want answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth.
Hey everybody, it's Brian Burns. Welcome to the Brutal Truth About Sales and Selling podcast. Today we're going to be talking about career strategy, long-term career strategy, not just your first job or your second job, but really looking at your career as a whole. And what do you look for as far as finding the right companies? You know, because it really goes in this order. It's like industry, company, manager, territory, comp plan. All of these elements play so strongly into how well you're going to get compensated. And let's face it, if you're not in sales to make money, it's not going to be a great match. There might be some farming jobs or account management jobs out there. And if that's your thing, that's great. But most of us are here to make money because there's so much more pleasant ways of spending our lives than traveling and really trying to get a hold of people and trying to, convince people to do things and taking a lot of rejection all day. So what we got to do is we got to really sit down and think through our careers and make sure we're going in the right mega direction and minor direction. What are the signals of when it's going to work and when it's not going to work? And how do you pivot quickly if it isn't? How do you network with other people? How do you leverage recruiters? What to ask before you get in? What to make sure you get into your offer letter so that you don't show up and say, oh, it's an open territory. We'll figure it out once you get hired. These are all things that I've run into before several times, and they're very painful because they're so hard to recover from. They're 6 months, a year. And what ends up happening sometimes is people get into what I call the downward spiral. They go from an A job to a B job to a C job. So I've got my buddy Brad on the show today. He's been a long-time listener, and he really wanted to jump on and kind of share his perspective on this issue, and we'll get right into it. And listen up for the end because I've got some updates that I want to give you, and make sure you're checking out the show notes for all the good stuff. Here we go with my buddy Brad. Hey Brad, thanks for joining us today. As a way of getting started, tell us about yourself.
Hey Brian, glad to be here. Yeah, so I've been in sales now for about more than a decade. I'll say that. Yeah. Probably closer to 2 decades. Been in the technology industry for the entire time, and have been working with companies both large and small. Run the gamut from companies that had zero revenue when I was part of them to companies that have billions of dollars in revenue, and seen those operating models through the lens of a seller, and being able to compare the two.
Now, from a career strategy standpoint, what mistakes have you made, and what brilliant insights do you have?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think particularly from a sales perspective, I want to isolate it from a sales perspective versus other roles. So what's unique to sales is, even though a company may look like it has a tremendous opportunity and the brand itself is strong and the market for what they're doing is strong, you may hit it at the wrong time, right? They may have already either scaled out, or they may have already sort of hit the big wave, and now you're kind of on the beach looking for the scraps of the seashells. Some of the big decisions that I've made that have worked out well was analyzing the market that the opportunity was in, and by opportunity I mean the company, and understanding that where the market was. Was it something that was going to define a new category, truly define a new category, or was it something that the company was trying to make up a category? If it's a truly category-defining opportunity, those are a little difficult to spot. That's where I've really had tremendous success. So those have been the really smart decisions. The poor decisions I've made are mostly early on, but looking at a company and thinking, wow, that's a really fantastic, company. They've got a great story, but I didn't analyze what it would mean to be a seller in that environment. And what I mean by that is, again, back to the wave, the waves already crashed on the beach. Everybody rode it in, had a great time, and now there's, you're left picking through the wreckage. And, that's a tough spot to be as a seller. Might be great, in marketing or as an attorney or something else. But as a seller, you really want to see where they are in the crest of that process. So I've had some hits and misses in that respect, but mostly hits so far. So I've been what's the saying? Better to be lucky than good, but I'll take a little bit of both.
And that's it, because a lot of us view it as we pick the right industry, we pick a market leader, we pick a great manager, but there's still a lot more there. There's like, how about the territory? How about the comp plan? How about, the accounts that you get? How about the tech support you receive? There's so many elements to being able to be successful that you may have influence over, but you don't have control over.
That's a great point. And one thing I would recommend to folks is use your influence when you have it.
Yeah.
Right. So a piece of advice I would give people is if you're looking at a new opportunity, you have at that moment when you make the decision that it's something you want to pursue, and the company or the organization makes a decision that you're the person they want to pursue, you have most of the leverage, right? Certainly they could go find another candidate, but if you're concerned about the territory, ask for it to be structured differently. If you're concerned about the quota or the comp plan, see if there's some things that they can do in the beginning to appease you a little bit and make that a more, smoother transition. Because once you're in the door, once you sign on the line and you start to hit the ground, I'm not saying they won't work with you. Companies will, but you lose a lot of that leverage. And so use the leverage in the beginning, use the leverage before you join, and certainly understand what you're getting into. You brought up a good point about territory, right? I think one of the things that I've always done, and I've seen my peers do it, is why is the territory open? That's a big question that I think people forget to ask.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
why are you hiring me? Yeah. So.
Or we'll decide that once you get aboard, and you're like, no, can we decide that now? because once you
correct,
start,
right, yeah, true.
What repercussions do you have?
You're in.
Yeah, because
other than quitting.
Yeah, you certainly can quit,
right?
But you have to still get another job, and then you have to explain it.
You have to, yeah.
And then it becomes
you have to get another job, and then you end up a resume of like I say, a LinkedIn profile of broken dreams.
Yeah.
Right?
And that is something that people really don't think through. And, a lot of people certainly listening to the podcast, they want to get into a better industry, but you got to understand that it's not just the industry, that it is the company, that it is the manager that's really important, because a good manager will protect their people and won't, just go hire 10 people all at once in an open territory and let's figure it out January 3rd, let's say, and fight over North Dakota. It's that they'll figure that out before they hire somebody. And, too often I've seen, certainly living in DC, that people will just hire a public sector person just to cover the org chart. And you're like, well, that's nice, but is there any interest in that space? Do you have the infrastructure yet? Do you have any of the contract vehicles? All of these other things that, if you aren't prepared for, could take 6 to 9 months to weed through. And if the manager's
that's a great point.
People, they're assuming, 30% are going to wash out. And that's not a good environment to be in. What are the signals that you...
Yeah, that's a great point.
The category thing is a good thing, because I've heard a lot of people say that they look for, category creation and then pick one of the top 2 players in that category. And that's worked out for a lot of people. What I've also seen work out is the Mafia approach, where you kind of follow around a VP of sales from company to company.
Mm-hmm.
I did that once and it didn't work out too well.
I think that so a couple things on that, right? The Mafia approach it can work really, really well because you think about back to the opportunity identification and where you want to go. Management, leadership, does the style mesh with how you want to function? A lot of times in the Mafia model, the reason why that works and why people pursue it is because there is that comfort level. So you know that your leader trusts you. You've worked with each other before. You know how that leader operates. You know their expectations, and you know when what happens when, for lack of a better term, the bullets start flying. Right? You know that leader is not going to panic, and you know that they're going to treat you well and figure things out. So I think that's the allure of the Mafia model. But to your point, sometimes it won't work because, if the leader chooses the wrong place to be, that ends badly, right? And it doesn't work. It's not a guarantee of success. It's a guarantee of comfort, but it's not a guarantee of financial success and performance success. And the category aspect, you pick the one or two top ones. I think my thinking when I'm looking at a category opportunity and then I identify the players, if I start to speak with them, hopefully that happens, right? And then really understand where they are in their business cycle. So one thing that always comes up is everybody wants to tout the customers that they have. So you get hit by recruiters and, hey, this company's, they're growing like crazy, and they always give you a couple of client names. Well, what are those clients actually doing with the product from that company? Yeah. Do they have some side project that, you gave it away and they're using it, which happens a lot depending on the industry you're in, or, they're doing a pilot or something like that. And then, they buy a small chunk and it's kind of circling around and they can use the logo because they gave them a good deal, but there's really not a lot of meat behind it, but they're using it to market their company, not only to other customers, but to people to come sell for them. And so asking questions about what the customers are currently doing, where they are in the cycle of their use of whatever product it is you're going to go represent, I think is an important factor in deciding on an opportunity's potential for success as a seller.
And give us a sense of what's caused you to leave a company.
Yeah, that's a good question. I've been fortunate in my career that I really have never moved on due to bad leadership. Right, that's not something that I've run into. Everyone has quirks, and you're going to get times where you don't agree with what leadership is doing, and they don't potentially agree with what you're doing. A lot of times, when I've made a decision to move on, it really is about the opportunity itself. So a couple things. One, you got a quality of life factor, because I really do believe that if you're not happy personally, no matter what you do professionally, it will never be enough. And so, there's a reason why we're in this business. We're in this business to make money, to make customers successful. I really believe in making customers successful and seeing what happens when they are, right? Not just for me, but for them personally. It means a lot. And so that type of stuff is there. But when I decide to move on, it's really about the stage of the life cycle of the product, the life cycle of the company. Are they getting to the point where they're just hiring and hiring and hiring people and, thinning out the opportunity and thinning out what you can do? Or is it a situation where the product life cycle has matured? So back to the wave, right? The wave has crashed on the beach. You enjoyed the ride. And now, the company you would pick a revenue spot, right? Whether they went from 0 to 20 million or whether they went from $500 million to $1 billion, those are tough points to cross. And so you really want to look at, and I've looked at, what is it going to mean for me by investing another couple of years, because for all sense, we have 30, maybe 40 years as professionals doing what we do. And so every cycle of 3, 4, 5 years is a big chunk of your career and where you want to go next. And so looking at that is really where I make my decision to stay or go. Right? What's the payback for the investment in a lot of different angles, right? Professionally and personally.
So you would characterize yourself as that, money motivated sales guy, right? So just the classic, I want to
sure.
which I can identify with,
right?
As opposed to like the account
right.
manager or the ladder climber or the company, hang arounder, those people, they do okay, but they tend to be, insanely frustrated. They become part of the insanity.
That's right. And they adjust to the insanity, right? I think there's a I really truly love what I do. And I think when I really look at the span of my career and then where I would want to go with it, I see there's a lot of joy there. It's not just the money. Money is a big part of it for sure. Everybody, I don't think anybody would not be sitting on a beach if it wasn't for the fact that we needed money, right? But the personal aspect of the job as well. I truly enjoy meeting clients. I truly enjoy working with them, provided they're willing to work with me, right? I don't stalk them out in the parking lot, but once you engage with a customer in their process, really seeing what they're doing and helping them with their business, and then also understanding, their motivations and what's going to make them successful and helping them do that. You're almost like a coach sometimes with your customers, and that brings a lot of happiness to me. But for sure, the money is the money, right? And if you're going to be in this career, you're going to, at the end of the day, you have to look at what makes you happy in terms of what's your comfort level from an income perspective. If you know you need to make X amount of money and the wave has crashed on the beach and you will not do that, regardless of, your metal detector or whatever you're using on the beach, you have to make a decision, right? You got to make a decision. And sometimes you take a leap that might be uncomfortable, but that's sometimes it's worth it. I would say, give it after you analyze, take a leap and see what happens.
So, just out of curiosity and your personal opinion, not that you are looking out in the industry right now, what do you see as exciting out there from a category standpoint or a particular segment that you see as, where the wave hasn't crested, but it sure is building and it's coming in?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'll speak. Yeah. I'll speak from a technology standpoint, but I think there's a couple of categories, and I don't want to go to the ones that kind of everybody goes to as a knee-jerk reaction, but cloud as a whole, right? Yeah. Whether it's the infrastructure itself, which is obviously dominated by Amazon and Microsoft, and you've got Google coming up behind them, although there's been this, it's basically a land grab. Right. So it's all about the infrastructure and getting the workloads, but everything that comes along with that ecosystem. Right. Yeah. So how are customers going to manage those environments? How are customers going to secure those environments? How are customers going to maintain control of their data and what happens to it? Because ultimately, I think that the cloud providers, they're not altruistic. Right. Jeff Bezos is a multi-billionaire, and there's a reason why they're doing what they're doing, because 3 or 4 years from now, you're there, you're not moving, and that's a revenue stream. And so looking at how customers are going to be able to manage that environment going forward as they move more critical workloads over, that's a space. And I don't know the players, right? I haven't looked. I'm not in the market for another opportunity, so I haven't looked. But that's an environment that you want to look at. Another environment you want to look at is from an AI perspective, the ability to drive costs out of consumer channels. So whatever that technology might be, companies are trying to reduce operating costs so that they can compete faster and more efficiently. And so something like, whether it's bots or whether it's AI interaction with customers, driving down those fixed costs of attaining customers and retaining customers. There's technology that's targeting that space. I see that as being very, very interesting because every company has customers, and every company's customer is looking for ways to remove friction from the process of working with the companies they work with. And so in those spaces, I think that there's a lot of opportunity, and I think that there'll be a lot of money spent, right? It's not just going to be cool to do. Companies are investing in it. They're looking at it. It might be a little early, which is probably a whole other podcast topic, getting in too early, but those are the markets that I'd be looking at right now.
Yeah, that was always my problem. I was, most of the time, 9 times out of 10, I was a little early by a year or two. And one time I was late by about a year. And if you get it right, and I guess you can kind of follow the smart VCs, because at least if they're putting the money in, they've vetted it. Doesn't mean much, but it at least means that smart people are going after it, smart money, and then you got to evaluate the leadership. Is anyone really using, like you said, the product, or is it still kind of labware? Right. In your role, how much is inbound versus cold outbound?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think it's certainly a blend of both. I don't subscribe to the theory that cold calling is dead and outbounding is dead. It's not. You need to build awareness. You need to build, and when I say awareness, it's more so. It's weird, the psychology of awareness in my mind, right? You almost want to be there, hanging around in the customer and prospect's mind, not in the forefront, because the reality is most customers are driving towards specific projects or missions, and that's consuming their time. I mean, you've seen it as you interact with customers. You can't get time with them, even if you're engaged with them and they are a customer of yours. It's hard to do. So the concept of, putting together a well thought out LinkedIn message or email, that makes sense. But ultimately, what ends up happening is the real opportunities are the ones where the customers or prospects turn around and approach you. Now, that doesn't say that your outbound awareness didn't work, right? I mean, there's a reason why they approached you, because a lot of the groundwork that had been laid by marketing or your account development organization or you as a seller personally, it pays off. But sometimes that outbound activity sure sounds or feels like shouting into the wilderness. And then that inbound comes straggling through the forest to you, saying, "Hey, I heard you yelling 12 months ago. Now I'd love to talk to you."
Well,
but
that's a great point, because people don't understand that no one's sitting there waiting for you to call, right? I mean, and
no,
even when they are inbound and interested, they still may be, months or even a year away from taking action. They're at the curiosity stage. And especially when the price is high or the technology is cutting edge or the impact on the organization is dramatic, those are long sales cycles, and reps just got to manage them in proper priority.
Right. And that's something that I see a lot of, where if you're not taking the long view with an opportunity, you're going to miss some of the opportunity. Right? Whether you can close an opportunity in a couple of months for a quick, whatever your ASP may be, taking that longer view is really where you start to become truly, successful, because the easiest spend, the easiest deals to do are with existing successful customers. So make sure that you're invested in the journey with them, even if it's going to take them a year to put pen to paper and actually buy their first thing from you, because then they know that you're there, and being there for them is important, and making sure that the interactions you have with them are geared towards their success. And I'm not saying roll over for whatever they ask for, or, just do whatever they tell you to do, but keep in mind that, they're paying you for a reason. The product you're representing is going to solve problems for them, and enhance, hopefully, their career, right? I mean, you've seen executives get fired over making poor decisions and poor project planning and poor product selection. Yeah. So that's never a good spot for anybody to be in. And you get remembered for that, right?
Sure do.
You get your customer fired. That's a problem. That's a problem. So you don't want to do that.
Now, I'm sure you've seen a lot of other reps make tragic career mistakes. What would you say is like the number one mistake you've seen most people make that they should just obviously not even consider?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's we could probably do a top 10 list of those. Well, I would say from a career perspective, not truly analyzing what they're getting themselves into. So back to your question earlier about identifying and quantifying an opportunity for yourself. Because if you make too many wrong moves, you really do end up with a profile that is suspect. And that's the career killer, right? Because unless you're following the Mafia model and you have people that know you and say, oh, well, Brad made this mistake here, Brad made this mistake there, but I understand why he did it. You're going to have to start explaining those mistakes. So getting in and out. So on the flip side of that, one, making the wrong decision multiple times and having a bunch of short stints in your background. But I think another piece too, complete opposite, is staying too long. Right? Getting too comfortable inside an organization. Big problem. Big problem, because you're viewed as someone who coasted. It's really a funny paradox, isn't it? Because if you move too quick, you're not invested in the company's success. If you stay too long, you're not invested in your own success. Right? So, one or the other is a real problem. And when I say stay too long, I don't mean, I think 4 or 5 years, 6 years, depending on the trajectory of what's happening, is a really good run. But when you're somewhere for 15 years as a seller, as an attorney, as a marketing, that's different. But as a seller, that's a tough one to explain, to keep yourself marketable. Right? Yeah, because you've been doing a similar thing for so long.
Yeah, certainly as a hunter, certainly as the guy who's going to make it happen, as opposed to the guy who's going to take great care of a territory and an existing account base, right? Which is a typically different role. But I can't agree with you, Mike, right? Because I remember when I was hiring, if I saw somebody. What you would always see is, they've been there 10 years and they live 50 miles from an airport. And you're like, it's like, how hard have they really been working? Right.
And even though you might be working your tail off, if the people that are looking at your background don't know that, they're not going to give you the time to explain it. That's the problem, and that's where you run into situations where you're
because if you're good, what happens every year? Your quota doubles, or your territory gets cut in half, or some combination of it. So mathematically, that can happen probably 2-3 times before it just does not make mathematical sense that you can make great money there, unless you've got someone protecting you.
Right.
But hey, Brad, this has been a great
conversation.
I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, that's great.
And I think people get a lot out of it.
Yeah, it's been fantastic.
Hey, sorry, we talked over each other a little bit there, but Brad was really excited. And he's passionate about having made some great career choices. And it's really unusual for somebody to make them consistently and contiguously without a hiccup. I've seen that happen a few times. I've seen the Mafia Approach, where you basically find a great manager or a great CEO or a great team lead that will bring you along with them as they climb the org chart if you're not interested in getting into management. Getting into management's a whole nother topic that we can cover another time. Hey, I want to make a few announcements. Nudge.ai has enabled a new automated way of doing account-based sales and marketing. So all you have to do is put your companies in there, and it'll give you a morning report on those companies, tell you exactly what they care about, what they're sharing on social, what they're talking about, and use those as icebreakers to start the conversation. Also, want to give you an update on the courses. Start the Conversation, Get the Meeting is done really well. It's been out since the beginning of January, so we've got 9 office hours, so 9 additional hours of training in there, as well as the course is developed into something that's really powerful. And what you're hearing is people from all kinds of industries, how they're getting in and using this approach, and then how some people have actually got it all the way to a system and have outsourced it on pennies on the dollar. As well as, winning the complex sale. Here we are at the beginning of May, almost in the middle of May, if you're realistic. But this is the middle of Q2. So we've got to really have those deals that are going to close within our scope of our comp plan on track. Depending on your sales cycle, it's always longer than you anticipate. So check out that course. They're all at B2B and if you're serious about the course and you've checked it out and you have any questions, there's a calendar link on there where you can get a 15-minute slot to ask questions about the course. Happy to do that. I just ask that you be serious about it and not use it as a coaching call. It's not a coaching call. It's to determine whether the course is right for you and what you're selling and what other people are getting out of it. So just please respect that. I'd appreciate it. Also, there's the free ebook on that website, revenue.com. Also, make sure you're checking out Pipedrive. Pipedrive is on fire right now. They are adding capabilities and features that are fantastic. And also Gong.io, they've got some great content. They're doing a lot on cold calling. I'm kind of responding to a lot of their research with my anecdotal experience on the Sales Questions podcast. And I kind of launched a passion project, which is a career advice podcast, where I get frustrated when I talk to people that, especially outside the U.S., about how they feel that their careers are limited. And I think this is wrong, or maybe because they can't afford college or can't afford a great college, or, don't have that college gene, which I didn't. I didn't have it at all. I had terrible dyslexia. I did terrible in high school, not so good in college. I went at night. But, it wasn't that I was stupid. I just had a learning disability. I mean, the alphabet in first grade, how they had it on the top of the chalkboard. I mean, it looked like a Chinese food menu to me. And that is something that, was not diagnosed back when I was that age. Today, people understand that it's an issue and work around it. I had to work around it. My parents thought, oh, you're not working hard enough. My teachers thought I was just stupid and wanted to hold me back. And it kind of carries with you through life. So you kind of work around it. And it's kind of a reason I do the podcast versus so much of a blog. Since the advent of Grammarly, blogging has become a lot easier for me. Even though I've written a couple of books, believe me, my editor hated me. So that was kind of a nightmare. So with the Sales Advice podcast, the idea is I want to share ideas. I want to share experiences. I want to share an entrepreneur's view of how to either work for somebody else in the typical employee role and excel and grow and make money, how to pick the right industries. If you just can't work for somebody else and you got that entrepreneur gene, God bless you. I had it, and I didn't get out on my own soon enough. Honest to God, I had a chance very early, and I didn't take it. I should have taken it. I would have done probably much better. And but anyways, here I am now. I'm loving it. Long, hard road. It is not all that it's cracked up to that you hear on YouTube or on other podcasts that, it's a long, hard road if you want to take it. And what I want to do on that podcast is kind of explain the realities of the world today. What every company needs, skills that you should have, how to not make the typical mistakes that people make in their 20s and early 30s, how to not to get into traps in both your personal life and your professional life, and how to maximize your career. So if you're into that, check it out. Career Advice. It's a yellow logo. You can just search my name as well. It's in there on iTunes. I think you'll really enjoy it. It's pure me just riffing. And I'll have people on if you have, I don't want to make it just sales advice, sales career advice. I want to make it, generalized. Like even today's was, 80% sales, but, picking the right industry, whether you're an engineer, an accountant, or, a marketing person is critical as well. So, a lot of the things apply to all of them. So I don't want to make it just sales. I do want to help people, and I understand because what I've been getting from you listeners is probably 70 to 80% career questions. How do I deal with, this structure or these demands, these KPIs, this manager, this industry, this geography that I live in, I've gotten some personal life issues too. So I want to help people on that podcast. They're going to be short, probably less than 10 minutes, max 15. But you can just pop them in and get a different perspective and share it with people that who are kind of stuck in their career. And the course I came up to help people with this is the ones who have a desire and a money-motivated personality is the sales development master's degree, which will take you from anybody interested in sales all the way to get a sales job, all the way through the first year of the sales, being a sales development rep, into becoming a account exec, where the sky is the limit as far as you can make it. And it's, again, videos online coupled with office hours for personal coaching, 100% response to all questions via email, voicemail, YouTube videos, whatever you want to communicate your situation to, 100% response on that. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.